From the Histories of Herodotus, Book 6, Section 102 to 117. Having mastered Eretria, the Persians waited a few days and then sailed for Attica, flushed with their victory and confident that they would treat Athens in the same way. The part of Attic territory nearest Eretria, and also the best ground for cavalry to maneuver in, was at Marathon. To Marathon, therefore, Hippias the son of Pisistratus directed the invading army, and the Athenians, as soon as the news arrived, hurried to meet it. The Athenian troops were commanded by 10 generals, of whom the 10th was Miltiades. Miltiades' father, Cimon, the son of Stesagoras, had been banished from Athens by Pisistratus, the son of Hippocrates. While in exile, he had the good fortune to win the chariot race at Olympia, thereby gaining the same distinction as his half-brother, Miltiades. At the next games, he won the prize again with the same team of mares, but this time waived his victory in favor of Pisistratus, and for allowing the latter to be proclaimed the winner, was given leave to return to Athens. At a later Olympic festival, he won a third time, still with the same 4 mares. Soon after, Pisistratus having died, he was murdered by Pisistratus' sons, who sent some men to waylay him one night near the council house. He was buried outside Athens, beyond what is called the Sunk Road, and opposite his grave were buried the mares which had thrice won the chariot race. This triple victory had once before been achieved by a single team, that of Euagoras the Laconian, but there are no other instances of it. At the time of Cimon's death, Stesagoras, the elder of his 2 sons, was living in the Chersonese with Miltiades, his uncle, and the younger son, who was called Miltiades, after the founder of the settlement in the Chersonese, was with his father in Athens. It was this Miltiades who is now an Athenian general. He had recently escaped from the Chersonese and twice nearly lost his life, once when the Phoenicians caught him as far as Imbros in their anxiety to catch him and take him to Darius, and again when, after escaping that danger and getting home to what looked like safety, he found his enemies waiting for him and was prosecuted in the courts for his tyranny in the Chersonese. But he escaped this too, and after the trial was elected a general by the people. Before they left the city, the Athenian generals sent off a message to Sparta. The messenger was an Athenian named Phidippides, a professional long-distance runner. According to the account he gave the Athenians on his return, Phidippides met the god Pan on Mount Parthenium above Tegea. Pan, he said, called him by name and told him to ask the Athenians why they paid him no attention, in spite of his friendliness towards them, and the fact that he had so often been useful to them in the past, and he would be so again in the future. The Athenians believed Phidippides' story, and when their affairs once more in a prosperous state, they built a shrine to Pan under the Acropolis, and from the time his message was received, as they have held an annual ceremony with torch race and sacrifices to court his protection. On the occasion of which I speak, when Phidippides, that is, was sent on his message by the Athenian commanders and said that he saw Pan, he reached Sparta the day after he left Athens and delivered his message to the Spartan government. "Men of Sparta," the message ran, "the Athenians ask you to help them and not to stand by while the most ancient city of Greece is crushed and enslaved by a foreign invader, for even now Eretria has been enslaved, and Greece is the weaker by the loss of one fine city." The Spartans, though moved by the appeal and willing to send help to Athens, were unable to send it promptly because they did not wish to break their law. It was the 9th day of the month, and they said that they could not take the field until the moon was full. So they waited for the full moon, and meanwhile Hippias, son of Pisistratus, guided the Persians to Marathon. The previous night Hippias had dreamed that he was sleeping with his mother, and he supposed that the dream meant that he would return to Athens, recover his power, and die peacefully at home at an old age. So much for his interpretation. On the following day he was acting as guide to the invaders. He put the prisoners from Eretria ashore on Aegilea, an island belonging to the town of Stura, led the fleet to its anchorage at Marathon, and got the troops into position when they had disembarked. While he was busy with all this, he happened to be seized by an unusual violent fit of sneezing and coughing, and, as he was an oldish man, and most of his teeth were loose, he coughed one of them right out of his mouth. It fell somewhere in the sand, and though he searched and searched in his efforts to find it, it was nowhere to be seen. Hippias then turned to his companions and said with a deep groan, "This land is not ours. We shall never be able to conquer it. The only part I ever had in it my tooth possesses." So the meaning of the dream was now clear to him. The Athenian troops were drawn up on a piece of ground sacred to Heracles, when they were joined by the Plataeans, who had come to support them with every available man. Some time before this, the Plataeans had surrendered their independence to the Athenians, who had, in their turn, already rendered service to Plataea on many occasions and in difficult circumstances. The way it happened was this. Plataea was being hard-pressed by Thebes, and as Cleomenes, the son of Anaxandrides, happened to be in the neighborhood with a Spartan army, the Plataeans first thought of putting themselves into Spartan hands. The Spartans, however, refused the offer. "We live too far apart, and an alliance with us would be but cold comfort to you. You might be carried off into slavery several times over before any of us ever heard it. Our advice is that you make your surrender to Athens. Athens is your neighbor, and Athenian help is by no means to be despised." The advice did not proceed from goodwill toward Plataea, but merely from the Spartans' desire to embroil Athens in quarrels with the Boeotians. Nevertheless, the advice was taken. Representatives from Plataea, while the Athenians were engaged in offering sacrifice to the 12 gods, came and sat by the altar to make their solemn request, and the act of surrender was completed. When the Thebans heard what the Plataeans had done, they at once sent an army against them. The Athenians hurried to their defense, and a fight was on the point of beginning when the Corinthians intervened. They came up, and as both sides submitted the dispute to their arbitration, they fixed the boundary between the two countries, with the condition that there would be no interference from Thebes with any Boeotians who might not wish to belong to the Boeotian state. The Corinthians, after making this decision, left for home, and the Athenians also started on their return march, when they were set upon by the Boeotians. In the fight which ensued, the Athenians were victorious, and they followed up their victory by crossing the borderline which the Corinthians had fixed for Plataea, and making the river Asopos the frontier between the territory of Thebes on the one side and of Plataea and Husiae on the other. These were the circumstances under which the people of Plataea put themselves into Athenian hands, and which led to their coming to the support of Athens at Marathon. Amongst the Athenian commanders, opinion was divided. Some were against risking a battle, on the ground that the Athenian force was too small to stand a chance of success. Others, and amongst them Miltiades, urged it. It seemed for a time as if the more faint-hearted policy would be adopted, and so it would have been if not for the action of Miltiades. In addition to the 10 generals, there was another person entitled to a vote, namely the Polemarch, or war archon, appointed by lot. This office, which formerly carried an equal vote in military decisions with the generals, was held at this time by Callimachus of the Deme Aphidnae. To Callimachus, therefore, Miltiades turned. "It is now in your hands, Callimachus," he said, "either to enslave Athens or to make her free, and to leave behind you for all future generations a memory more glorious than even Harmodius and Aristogeiton left. Never in our history have we Athenians been in such peril as now. If we submit to the Persians, Hippias will be restored to power, and there is little doubt what misery must then ensue. But if we fight and win, then this city of ours may well grow to preeminence amongst all the cities of Greece. If you ask me how this can be done, and how the decision rests with you, I will tell you. We commanders are 10 in number, and we are not agreed upon what action to take. Half of us are for a battle, half against it. If we refuse to fight, I have little doubt that the result will be bitter dissension. Our purpose will be shaken, and we shall submit to Persia. But if we fight before the rot can show itself in any of us, then, if God gives us fair play, we can not only fight but win, Yours is the decision. All hangs upon you. Vote on my side, and our country will be free. Yes, and the first city of Greece. But if you support those who have voted against fighting, that happiness will be denied you. You will get the opposite." Miltiades' words prevailed, and by the vote of Callimachus, the war archon, the decision was made to fight. The generals held the presiding position in succession, each for a day, and those of them who had voted with Miltiades offered, when their turn for duty came, to surrender it to him. Miltiades accepted the offer, but would not fight until the day came when he would, in any case, have presided. When it did come, the Athenian army moved into position for the coming struggle. The right wing was commanded by Callimachus, for it was the regular practice at that time in Athens that the war archon should lead the right wing. Then followed the tribes in their regular order. And, finally, on the left wing were the Plataeans. Ever since the Battle of Marathon, when the Athenians offer sacrifice at their quadrennial festival, the herald links the names of Athens and Plataea in the prayer for God's blessing. One result of the disposition of Athenian troops before the battle was the weakening of their center by the effort to extend the line sufficiently to cover the whole Persian front. The two wings were strong, but the line in the center was only a few ranks deep. The dispositions made, and the preliminary sacrifice promising success, the word was given to move, and the Athenians advanced at a run toward the enemy, not less than a mile away. The Persians, seeing the attack developing at the double, prepared to meet it, thinking it suicidal madness for the Athenians to risk an assault with so small a force, rushing in with no support from either cavalry or archers. Well, that was what they imagined. Nevertheless, the Athenians came on, closed with the enemy all along the line, and fought in a way not to be forgotten. They were the first Greeks, so far as we know, to charge at a run, and the first who dared to look without flinching at Persian dress and the men who wore it. For until that day came, no Greek could hear the word Persian without terror. The struggle at Marathon was long drawn out. In the center, held by the Persians themselves and the Sacae, the advantage was with the foreigners, who were so far successful as to break the Greek line and pursue the fugitives inland from the sea. But the Athenians on one wing and the Plataeans on the other were both victorious. Having got the upper hand, they left the defeated enemy to make their escape, and then, drawing the two wings together into a single unit, they turned their attention to the Persians who had broken through in the center. Here again they were triumphant, chasing the routed enemy and cutting them down until they came to the sea, and men were calling for fire and taking hold of the ships. It was in this phase of the struggle that the war archon Callimachus was killed, fighting bravely, and also Stesilaus, the son of Thrasylaus, one of the generals, and Cunigerus, too, the son of Euphorion, had his hand cut off with an axe as he was getting hold of a ship's stern, and so lost his life, together with so many other well-known Athenians. The Athenians secured in this way 7 ships, but the rest got off, and the Persians aboard them, after picking up the Eretrian prisoners whom they had left on Aegila, laid a course round Sunium for Athens, which they hoped to reach in advance of the Athenian army. In Athens, Alcmaeodini were accused of suggesting this move. They had, it was said, an understanding with the Persians, and raised a shield as to signal them when they were already on board. While the Persian fleet was on its way round Sunium, the Athenians hurried back with all possible speed to save their city, and succeeded in reaching it before the arrival of the Persians. Just as at Marathon the Athenian camp had been a plot of ground sacred to Heracles, so now they fixed their camp on another, also sacred to the same god, at Kuno Sarges. When the Persian fleet appeared, it laid at anchor for a while off Philarium, at that time the chief harbor of Athens, and then sailed back to Asia. In the Battle of Marathon, some 6,400 Persians were killed. The losses of the Athenians were 192.